Hello everyone, this is a new session for PRM, latest PRM. Hamza Khurram is with me. He's one of my ex-student, current helping teacher, and he is doing so many more things for me. So he will be helping us today again for this PRM for June 2021. So Hamza, please reveal yourself.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me? Am I audible? Hello. Okay. Sir, if you could please allow me to open my camera as well.
All right, all right.
Sir, I do not have the permissions to open the camera. Could you please allow me to?
Okay, go on, go on.
All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I am Hamza Khurram. I will be co-hosting this PRM explanation video. And that is the introduction. We will be beginning with the PRM for variant 2.2 today, and it's divided into three tasks. I will be explaining all three of them with the pseudocode, and I will also be showing you the simulator, how it's going to look when it's all combined. So that is the agenda for today. Would you like to start us off, sir?
Yes. Hamza, you are muted. Are you?
I don't think so. Guys, everyone here, can you please respond if you can hear me?
All right, now we can. Start, please.
Okay. Right then, can you all see the PRM document that I have?
Yes.
Okay. Right, so this is the PRM for variant 2.2 of May-June 2021. This is the PRM that you guys will be concerned with. This is what you have to write the code for, and that is what we will be doing here today. So let's just quickly go through it before we actually go into the code. I'm going to read through this, and if at any point you have any questions, then please feel free to say those. All right, so an
Can you
electric.
please zoom?
Sorry, sure. 1 second. Is that better?
as big as possible.
Okay, there we go.
Good.
All right. So it says that your preparation for the examination should include attempting the following practical tasks by writing and testing a program or programs for these. So the question is that this is the situation that you have to refer to as the programmer. So an electric mountain railway makes 4 return trips every day. In each trip, the train goes up the mountain and back down. The train leaves from the foot of the mountain at 900 24-hour clock, 1100, 1300, and 1500. So that means 9 a.m., 11 a.m., 1 p.m., and 3 p.m. The train returns from the top of the mountain at 1000, 1200, 1400, and 1600. So that's 10, 12, 2, and 4. Each train has 6 coaches with 80 seats available in each coach. Passengers can only purchase a return ticket. All tickets must be purchased on the day of travel. The cost is $25 for the journey up and $25 for the journey down. Groups of between 10 and 80 passengers inclusive get a free ticket for every 10th passenger, provided that they all travel together. In other words, every 10th passenger travels free. Passengers must book their return train journey as well as the departure train journey when they purchase their ticket. Passengers can return on the next train down the mountain or a later train. The last train from the top of the mountain has 2 extra coaches in it. All right, so that's a lot of information to unpack. So let's do that step by step. So here in the very first line, it says that an electric mountain railway makes 4 return trips every day. So right off the bat, we know that a return trip is one forward trip and one back trip, right? So and then here it says the timings of the departure trips and the timings of the return trip. So if it leaves at 9, there is a return train that is exactly an hour after that. So that's at 10. If it departs at 9, there's a return at 10. If it departs at 11, there's a return at 12, and so on. So it says it makes 4 return trips every day. So that means 4 up and 4 down. In each train, it goes up the mountain and back down, like we just discussed. Um, the train returns from Purple Mountain at these times. Each train has 6 coaches with 80 seats available in each coach. So the way the train is divided is that there are coaches, as in sections of the train. So each section or each coach has 80 seats. If there are six coaches and 80 seats each, that makes a total of 480 seats. And passengers can only purchase a return ticket. All tickets must be purchased on the day of travel. What this part means, that all tickets must be purchased on the day of travel, that means that there's no part of the code that's going to be like you have to state the day of travel while purchasing the ticket. Everything you purchase is to be used at that day. There's no part of the code which is supposed to sort of calendarize like what day you want to purchase the tickets on. And the first part, that passengers can only purchase a return ticket, that actually links up with this part where passengers must book their train journey as well as the departure train journey. Here, there's a bit of a confusion actually. There's a bit of a miswording. The return trip means the return trip mentioned here, the return train journey and a return trip are 2 different things. The return train journey is one of these 4 trains where it's coming back down the mountain. A return trip is a combination of the departure journey and the return journey, whereas a return journey is just the train coming back down the mountain. Just in case that confuses anyone, there's that. And then the cost is $25 for the journey up and $25 for the journey down. So that means that um, a total return journey, which again, the passengers can only book a return journey. You can't book just the way up or just the way down. So a return journey for each passenger is going to cost them 50 bucks because they have to pay for the journey up and pay for the journey down. Then here, this part says that groups of between 10 and 80 passengers inclusive. So that means 10, 11, 12, all the way up to 79 and 80 get a free ticket for every 10th passenger. So basically, if there's 39 passengers, they get a free ticket for the 10th, the 20th, and the 30th because they didn't get all the way up to 40. So every 10th passenger travels free. So if there were 59, that means that 5 of them get to travel for free, and so on. Like every 10th has their prices retracted. Um, so yeah, that's the explanation of this first part. So then it says that the train times are displayed on a large screen. together with the number of tickets still available for each train. So that is part of the code. Every time a ticket is booked, the display is updated. When a train is full, the word closed is displayed instead of the number of tickets available. Next, it says that you have to write and test a program of programs for the Electric Mountain Railway. Sir, could you please monitor the chat, by the way? Because I won't be, I'll be focused more on the screen. So if you could do that, that would be a great help. Um, write and test a program or programs for the Electric Mountain Railway. Your program or programs must include appropriate prompts for the entry of data. Data must be validated on entry. So what this means is that if they're inputting a value that isn't allowed, so for example, if the departure times is something that isn't a part of these four, then our program must recognize that and it must stop that. Then it says that the error messages and other output need to be set out clearly and understandably. So if one of those conditions isn't met and we say that, hey, this is wrong, then the error message that we are saying must clearly tell you what the error is. Then it says that um, all variables, constants, and other identifiers must have meaningful names. So if you're storing the value of, for example, number of passengers, you can't just say variable one, variable two. You have to say number of passengers or num passengers or something that a reader, someone who is non-native to the code you wrote, they can analyze that and understand, get like a clear picture of what that variable represents. So next it says you will need to complete these three tasks. Each task must be fully tested. So okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through these tasks. I'm going to explain them, and before we dive into the code, we are going to take a run of the simulator, which is what the final product will be once we're done writing the code. So this is what our code is going to like produce. This is the code in action, and so I'm going to read through the PRM, the tasks. Then I will show you how those tasks will be executed, and then we'll go into the code and see how they are being executed. Um, so task one is the start of the day. So it says write a program to set up the screen display for the start of the day. And what is displayed at the start of the day is mentioned over here. So it says initialize suitable data structures to total passengers for each train journey and total the money taken for each train journey. So we are going to need data structures that show how many passengers are there for each train journey. Again, a train journey and a train trip are two different things here. The train journey is the start, the ride up or the ride down. So each one of them have to be stored differently. And then it also says to total the money taken for each train journey. So each train journey must be totaled separately. So there has to be like a separate data structure for each train journey. So that makes total of 8 data structures because there's 4 up and 4 down. So there has to be 8 structures for the total money, the total passengers, etc. And here it says there are 4 journeys up and 4 journeys down every day. So let's take a look at how this is going to look in the code. And I have been told that I need to increase the size. So let's just do that. Bear with me 1 second. All right, I hope that's better. Right then. So task one is the start of the day display. So here this is the menu, and if it says task one is option one, task two is option two, task three is option three, and if you want to quit the simulator, that's option four. So right now we want to view how task one is going to look. So we press one. And so here is the display that we have been given. So we have four departure trains and 4 return trains. If we take a look at what they asked, they said write a program to set up the screen display for the start of the day. Now here it says that the train times are displayed on a large screen together with the number of tickets still available for each train. So here it says the train time, which is that the departure train is at 9 and the tickets left for that train are 480. Why are they 480? Because as we discussed, each train has 6 coaches and each coach has 80 seats. So the total number of seats, in other words, the total number of tickets are 480. So if you could monitor all the hand raises and the questions, then that would be great. Is it in the algorithm? Yes, it is. It is in the algorithm, and we will be showing. I will be showing how the code works once we get done with the simulator. Um, Then it says that the departure train is at 11 and the ticket left are again 480. Similarly with the 1300 train and the 1500 train. Then we move on to the return trains, which are at 10, 12, 14, and 16. However, if you notice that there is a bit of a difference here, in that the tickets left for the last train are not 480, they are 620. So some of you might have noticed why that is, which is when we come here, here it says that the last train from the top of the mountain has two extra coaches on it, and the last train from the top of the mountain is the last return train, which is at 1600. So this one doesn't have six coaches; it has eight. It has two extra coaches, so the total comes up to 620 seats. So that is the start of the day display. Um, that is all that has to be displayed, and then there are purchasing tickets. So one second. Yes, that is correct. So then it has to be then we come on to the task of purchasing tickets. So the tickets can be purchased for a single passenger or a group. When making a purchase, check that the number of tickets for the required train journeys up and down the mountain is available. So for example, if there have been if there's only, like, let's say 30 tickets left and you are for a particular train journey and you're trying to book tickets for a group of like 48, then obviously that can't happen because there aren't enough tickets left on the train, right? So it says that when making a purchase, check that the number of tickets for the required train journeys up and down are still available. If the tickets are available, calculate the total price, including any group discounts, and then update the screen display and the data for the totals, which again, as mentioned here, every time that a ticket is booked, the display is updated. Right, so let's just take a look at how this will look the in the simulator. So here we enter our choice of two, and right here it asks me enter the number of passengers traveling. So I'm going to say that there are 43 passengers traveling, which if you're already like thinking about what the output is going to be, we now have four people who are going to be traveling on discounts. So just keep that in mind because of the 10th person, the 20th, the 30th, and the 40th. So that makes four people who are traveling at discounts. So let's do that. Now it says choose the departure timing. So let's say I want to depart at 0900. I type in 0900 because that is one of the correct values that have been given to you, and I press that. So now it says the total tickets price is 975, and it's 975 because actually I want you guys to participate along with this. Write 43 times 25 and then minus 25 times 4. So 43 times 25 means that since each train journey up is um, is $25. So that means for 43 people who are traveling, that would be 43 times 25. However, every 10th person is getting a discount. So that means that there are a total of four times 25 because 25, like four tickets have been revoked, right? So four times 25 is going to be subtracted, and that gives you a total of 975. So then it says choose the departure timing. So let's say I want to come back down the mountain at 1000. So yes, Salman, that is correct. If I say that I want to come back down at 1000, I will type in just a moment here. I will type in 1000, and then it tells me again that the total ticket price is 975 because again the train journey up costs the same as the train journey down, so that is that stays the same. Now, the last part, it said that if you remember that every time a ticket is purchased, the screen display is updated and all the previous data is displayed again. So now, if you take a look back, the departure train has tickets which are subtracted by 43. So 480 minus 43, that gives you this. There are 437 tickets that are remaining, and the return train also has 437 tickets. And then it asked me if I would like to buy another ticket or not. Let's just say no, and then we quit. So that is task 2 in action. Lastly, it says task 3, end of the day. So display the number of passengers that traveled on each train journey and the total money taken for each train journey. So throughout the day, what's going to be happening in the code is that every time somebody tries to purchase a ticket, is going to register that and is going to note that in a counter array, which I'll explain when I go through the code. and it will just keep on adding those, and it will display that in the end. And the total money taken for each train journey again will be another array. Here it says suitable data structures, right? So the suitable data structure in this case is going to be an array, and so it's going to store that in those arrays, and it's going to display that at the end. So then it says calculate and display the total number of passengers and the total amount of money taken for the day. So this means that all 8 of them have to be summed up, and they have to be displayed. So the total money taken for all 8 journeys, and the total number of passengers on all 8 journeys. Then it says find and display the train journey with the most passengers that day. So let's take a look at how this is going to look like in the simulator. Now, just one thing before we do that. This last part, find and display the train journey with the most passengers, is obviously just going to be it's just going to be one, because it's just going to be like one of these two. It's going to be either of these because we've only run this once, right? But in reality, this code is going to be run many times. So there's going to be a much greater spread of the data, whereas this was only one example. So it's going to have a much less. It's going to have much less of a spread. Now, if I just open that again, bear with me 1 second. Simulator. There we go. I'm going to go through the process of buying again just to increase that spread. So 900, and then if I say number of passengers traveling, about 1100. So here, if there are not enough tickets left, it says that there are not enough tickets left for the day. So this is one of those tests. 1 second. Here. So what just happened there is that task 1 is the initialization. So if you see here, when we go through the code, we will see how the arrays are initialized for every task. So task 1 set up these values. So when I tried to purchase a ticket previously, when I just opened up the simulator, it didn't have these arrays initialized. So these values weren't set in. So obviously it didn't allow me to do that. However, now, if I say I want to purchase a ticket, let's say there are 46 people traveling, and I want to travel at 0900, that gives me the total price. Again, you can do the math, how we arrived at total price. That's going to be 46 times 25 minus 4 times 25. So let's say I want to return at 1200 this time. There we go. And I'm going to say no. Right then, the end of the day display. So that's task 3. That's option 3. And this is the data that we are given. So here, 1 second. Here. So I'm going to have to zoom out a little bit. Here we go. So now it says that the number of passengers on the 1000 return journey are 0, because again we didn't have any in the return journeys, and so here it gives you all the data for the passengers in the way that it's required. So here it says in task 3, display the number of passengers that traveled on each train journey and the total money taken for that journey. So here it says that the number of passengers on the 1200 return train journey were 46, because in the example that I just did most recently, I entered the number of passengers as 46. So 46 people were traveling on the 1200 return train, and then it says that the total money taken for the 1200 return train journey was 1050, because again that was the only journey that happened, and as we just saw, it told us what the value is for what the total price is, and that was equals to 1050. So after that, then this is the part where it says which journey had the most passengers. So here it says that the 0900 departure train had the most passengers, and then we also have to calculate and display the total number of passengers and the total amount of money taken for the journey. And so the 09 and so the total money taken for the day was 2100, and you can do the math yourself because we only had one train journey, and the sum for one way was 1050, and each return journey costs the same. So that's going to be 1050 times 2, and that's going to be 2100. There will be no, yeah, exactly. If task 1 hasn't been executed, then there will be no array. Precisely. Right. And then it says that the total number of passengers traveling for that day is 92. And again, that's because we had 46 on the way up and 46 on the way down. So that means that the total passengers for all of the journeys included was 92. So that brings us to the end of the display. If I enter quit here, it exits the simulator. So that is what the code is going to look like when we are done. When we are done with all three tasks, that is the final product. That is what we have to accomplish. And the way we're going to do that is what we're going to take a look at now. And so here I have separate files for the pseudocode for task 1, the pseudocode for task 2, and the pseudocode for task 3. Just one second. There we go. And so I will be explaining all of these individually. So let's begin with task 1. All right, so we're going to be going back and forth between the question and the code so that I can relate what part is doing what. So here it says that write a program to set up the screen display for the start of the day. And at the start of the day, what it wants us to do is display the train times and the number of tickets that are still available. So here it says the majority of task 1 is declarations and outputs, because that is all that's required, all that's required of us for this task. So here we have a couple of arrays, and why we have them, why they exist, will make more sense once we go through the code, but I will be briefly introducing all of them. And then their execution within the code will make greater sense when we go through tasks 2 and 3. So here we are declaring an array of leave tickets, which is an array that has 4 elements. So declare leave tickets as array of 1 to 4 of integers. So 1 to 4 means that it has indexes 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are the 4 elements, the 4 indexed elements that exist within this array. And then the data type is integer. Then we have return ticket, which is declared in a similar manner. And so the purpose of these two arrays is that leave tickets and return tickets is going to store the number of tickets left for each of the trains. So leave tickets will have the number of tickets left for all 4 of the leaving trains, so the departure trains, and return tickets will have the tickets left for all 4 of the return trains. So again, and then we have an array of leave passengers and return passengers declared in a similar manner, and you can probably guess why, like the purpose of these, which is to tabulate or to sort of sum up how many passengers are traveling um, on each train. So how many are traveling on the leave train and how many are traveling on the return train. Then we have an array of leave total and return total, which is again declared in a similar manner. And once more, you can probably guess why these exist. Their purpose is that this is the total money taken for the leave trains, for each of the leave trains, and this is the total money taken for each of the return trains. And why these exist is right here. It says that initialize suitable data structures to total the passengers for each train. So that is leave passengers and return passengers. This is the array that's going to be storing all of the passengers that are traveling on each train. And then here we have, and then it says that total the money taken for each train journey. So that is leave total and return total. That is going to store the total amount of money. So I hope that makes sense. And let me just zoom into the document here so that it's a bit clear. Here we go. All right. So here it says that, and so that's task 1. So that is why, that is the declaration of task 1. That is why these data structures exist. Then what we have to do is initialize, like it says here, initialize suitable data structures. In fact, we saw this in the simulator when I tried to run task 2 without running task 1. These data structures had not been initialized. So all of these values were 0 to begin with. And so it didn't have any tickets for me to buy. So here it says the initialize data structures and to total the passengers for each train. So here we are, this is part of the initialization. So leave ticket 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the first index is the first train journey for departure, which is the 0900 train. So this is the first train that leaves, right? So at index 1 is gonna be the train 0900. Index 2 is gonna be hold on. Index 2 is going to be the 1100, index 3 will be the 1300, and index 4 will be the 1500 leave trains, departure trains. And so in a similar manner, and so all of these values are set to 480 because leave tickets stores the number of tickets left for that train journey, right? So So initially there are again 480 tickets as we discussed earlier, 6 coaches, 80 tickets per coach, and so the total is 480 tickets per journey. And so in a similar manner, we initialize the same values for the return tickets, except of course that the 1600 train, the last train at index 4, has 620 tickets instead of 480 because it has 2 extra coaches. So here we have the first index is going to be the 1000 train. Let me just show you here: 1000, 1200, 14, and 16. Right. So we're gonna have the 1000 train. We're gonna have the 12 noon train. We're gonna have the 1400 train and the 1600. And so then and these are the tickets left respectively. And this one has 2 extra coaches. Then we initialize the arrays of leave passengers and return passengers, which means that we have to see how many passengers have traveled in each of the journeys, which of course at the beginning of the day is going to be 0 for each. So there's going to be no passengers in all of the trains, regardless of whether it's departure or return. So we just set all of them to 0. And then leave total, of course, there has been no money collected for any of the trains, and this array was storing the total amount of money. And so there's going to be none in any of these. So leave total 1 is going to be 0, 2, 3, 4, and then of course there hasn't been anyone returning either. So all of those are going to be 0 as well. Now we get to the actual display. This is what was required of us as of task 1, the second part of task 1. So here, this is just stuff you saw in the simulator. So you don't actually have to write this in the code that you will be presenting. You have to be concerned with this part. So now it says output train departure train 0900 tickets left, and then this string is concatenated. This is the concatenation symbol, the ampersand, or known as the and symbol. And so what this does is that it takes two strings, and it concatenates them. And what concatenation is that it joins one string with another. So this is going to be a string, and what it's going to be, I'll just explain in a second. But this string will be joined with this string. So when we output it, as we saw in the simulator, it will be output as one string. In fact, let me just show you that again real quick. So here, see, so now what is done is that this value is this, and this are the same values. And what is done is that it has joined this value that it has received from this, and it has joined that with this. So this string, this was initially a separate string from here. This was a separate string, and this is a separate string, and it has joined that. So that's what this is doing. So it says that train departure 0900 tickets left, and then it converts the value of leave tickets 1. So leave tickets contains the number of tickets left for the departure journeys, right? And departure journey 1, as we discussed over here in the declarations, is going to be the first train that departures, and the first train that departures is the 0900 train. So the first ticket, the first train, the total tickets for the first train is taken. However, up here we saw that we declared these as integers, and we declared these as integers and not strings because we need to do mathematical operations on them. We will have to be counting them and summing them, and that of course requires an integer value or a real value instead of a string. You can't add a string in the same way that you can add a number. So it has to be declared as an integer for those purposes. But of course, when you output, you have to output in the same data type. So what it does is that it takes the values, it takes whatever is stored in here. So for the 0900 train, it takes the first element of the leave tickets. It converts that into a string. So this is a predefined function that you have in your syllabus. And so integer and string are the ones you have. And then it takes this, and it concatenates this with the pretext. So it takes this, and then it does the same thing for the second one. Then it does the same thing for the third and the fourth. So the departure train for 1100 is this. The departure train for 1300 is concatenated with the 1300 time, the 1300 tickets, and the last one is concatenated with this one. And then it repeats, and so this is an empty string, and this only exists here as a spacer between the two that we saw. So this space here, whoops, 1 second. This space here is a result of this empty string. So that's just in there for visual effect. And then we have the same thing repeated for all the return trains. So the 1000 is going to be the first because it was the first return train, and then it's going to be the same for the 1200, the 14, and the 16. However, this value, as we have discussed a couple of times by now, this value is going to be different than all of the above because the last train back has um, it has 620 instead of 480. So that is and that concludes all we need from task one. We come back down here. This is just information. It's not something that is telling us to do. So each train journey must be totaled separately, and that's what we're doing. We are totaling the we are totaling and displaying the journeys for all of them separately. So the 900 is done separately, the 1100 is done separately, 13 and so on. All right, so that is task one. And if let me know if you need a refresher through the simulator. I know this can be visually very helpful. So if you at any point feel that you would like me to show you the code in action along with explanation, so please let me know. All right, so that is task one. Next, we come on to task two. Let me just zoom in here. All right, take a deep breath because this one is going to be a bit longer because there's a couple of things being done here. So let's take a look back at what the task it requires of us. So task two is the purchasing tickets. And so now it says that the tickets can be purchased for a single passenger or for a group. When it's making a purchase, check that the number of tickets for the required train journeys up and down the mountain are available. If the tickets are available, then you calculate the total price, including any group discounts, and then update and display that is just a series of outputs. We will show that at the end. But all right, so there are three things that are being done here in task two majorly. One is that whenever you enter how many people are traveling, it has to make sure that the number of people who are traveling, in other words, the number of tickets that they're going to be buying, um, are available for whatever journey they wish to buy it for. So if it's for the 900 departure, the 900 departure must have the number of tickets that that they're trying to buy, right? So that's the first part. Then it says that if the tickets are available, calculate the total price including any group discounts. So the second part is that it will take a look at the base price, which for each journey is 25 and 25. So that's going to be 25 up and 25 down. And then it's going to take that and it's going to calculate what the group cost will be. So it's going to see how many people are traveling, and it's going to do the same that I made you do when we were going through the simulator. It's going to multiply all of the value, the number of people traveling with the base price, and then it's going to subtract any discount. Again, I will be showing this within the code. This is just an overview, and then the third one is going to be to update the screen display and the data for the total. So it's going to store whatever values are necessary back into the data structures that the values are concerned with. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to go through the declarations. I will be like right now. I will be coming back to these when we actually encounter them within the code, because otherwise it's going to seem a bit arbitrary. It's not going to make a lot of sense. So I'll just go through the ones that exist, but their purpose I will show you within the code. Okay. So here we are declaring continue flag as boolean. So real quick, a flag is just a value that you set to either true or false, and it signifies whether a process has been completed or whether a condition is fulfilled, right? Which is, and it's usually used in a loop to either exit a loop or to keep going. All right, so we have declared a flag called continue flag. We have declared a flag called discount flag. We have declared a flag called departure and one called return flag. I mean, feel free to theorize why these are necessary. You might want to think ahead and sort of like picture the code in your head and see what might be happening. But I will be explaining why these exist when we actually encounter them. So then it declares a continue flag string as a string. And real quick, this is going to be the input by the user. So it's going to take an input as a string and then compare that to the Boolean value. Again, I'll be explaining that when we come across it. Um, then we have departure journey as a string. We have return journey as a string. So these are variables that will be containing the user's choice of when they want to travel, when they want to departure and when they want to return. Then we have the number of passengers declared as an integer, and this is the number of passengers in the group. So whenever they're buying tickets, they're going to have to enter how many passengers are traveling, and the discounts will be calculated accordingly. Number of passengers temp. This is a temporary variable, which I'm not going to explain why it's necessary until we actually get to it. So I'll show you when we get to it. But then we declare discount as an integer and cost as an integer. So this will store the value of how much discount they're earning, and this is gonna store the value of the final cost. All right, so that is the declarations. Now we get to the actual code. So here, the first thing we're doing is that we are setting the continue flag to true. So um, I'll show you why this is necessary when we get to the end of the repeat statement. But essentially, what's happening is that we are checking if a few conditions are met, which is going to determine whether the loop has to keep going or not. So basically, at the end of all of these executions, when we're done executing whatever this part of the code is, it will ask the user whether or not you want to enter another value, whether or not you want to purchase another ticket, or if like the day is over, right? And so if the user says yes, I want to purchase another ticket, then continue flag remains true, and all of this runs again. As you saw in the simulator, it was asking me. In fact, let me show you. Uh, 43 or 900, just say 1000 here. Now it asks me, are there more tickets to buy? So if I enter yes, which in this case is Y, capital Y, then continue flag remains true and it goes back through it. However, if I enter no, then it does not. Let's just enter yes because we entered no last time. And there we go. And so it repeats all of that and it says enter the number of passengers traveling for the second group. So if I say 56, etc., it's gonna keep going. So that is why we set continue flag to true, because we want it to happen in the first place. So initially the value is set to true. Now we are entering a repeat statement, and real quick, a refresher for those who might have forgotten. A repeat loop is one that runs until a condition is met. So the difference between a repeat and a while loop is that while does not enter, like the while loop does not enter the actual code until like the condition is met. So it will never go through it even once. It will check whether the condition is met before entering the loop. Whereas a repeat loop will go through the code once, and then it will check whether or not it should do it again. And if it should do it again, if like in this case, if continue flag is equals to true, then it will go back through it. Otherwise, it won't. So we are using a repeat loop because we want it to work at least once. So here is outputting two empty strings, and that is just for visual effects. So these two lines here that you see, the spacings, these are the continue flags, and the empty strings, and this is courtesy of these two empty strings that are being output. So then it says output, enter the number of passengers traveling. So this is this part, and then it takes an input and it stores that input in the variable num passengers. So so now we see this variable that was declared up here, which is num passengers. It is declared as an integer, meaning this is the data structure that stores the values, that stores the number of passengers traveling per group. Um, have you answered? 1 second. Why are we not giving any values to each of them? To each of whom? Here, 1 second. Task one. We are giving values to each of them. So leave tickets and return tickets, like all of these were declared up here. So leave tickets and return tickets already have the values assigned to them, and then we are just displaying those. We are displaying those values down here. I hope that answers your question. And so 1 second. Right. So next, what's happening is that once it takes the input, it stores that in a variable called num passengers, and this now has the number of people in the group. Next, we set discount to 0 because currently, again, when we initialize, we have to set a string to an empty string and a integer to 0. That's just the way initializations work. And so we set discount to 0. And here is why we needed the num passengers temp, the temporary string, and I will show you just in a second. So now what we're doing is that we are taking a temporary variable called num passengers temp, and we are storing that with the same value as num passengers. So so now there are two variables that contain the same value, and we are running another repeat loop. So this repeat loop is within the other one. So there's a super loop, and then these are the nested loops. Um, and this is going to check. So basically, what this part does, before we actually go into the code, let me just explain. This part is the one that calculates how much discount is going to be earned on the number of passengers left. So what it's going to do is that it's going to repeat this, and so if num passengers temp minus 10 is greater than or equal to 0. So here's what's happening. Um, the discount is one person per 10 people, right? So for every 10 people that are traveling, one person has one ticket gets refunded. So what it's doing is that num passengers temp contains the number of people that are traveling, right? Because initially we set num passengers temp to the same value as num passengers, and num passengers is how many people are traveling. So we say that a num passengers temp equals num passengers, and so this contains the same number of passengers that are traveling. I know I repeated that a lot of times, but I hope that makes sense. So what we're doing is that we are subtracting 10 from it. And if that is greater or equals to 0, then that means that there were at least 10 people that are traveling. So let's say that we had 11 people. So let's say initially the input was 11. When the user was asked how many people are traveling, they said 11 people. So num passengers temp currently contains 11 people. So if you subtract 10 from that, that gives you 1, right? And 1 is greater or equals to 0. So that means there were at least 10 people that were traveling. And so that means that they get one discount, because every time that they subtract 10, that means that one person, that at least there's at least 10, and that gives you one discount value. And so you take discount, which you initially set to 0, and then you add 1 to it. So this is a totaling statement, and so discount is being added 1 to, and then num passengers temp is being subtracted by 10. So real quick again, what's happening here is that, for example, let's say you had 9 people traveling, right? So if you had 9 people traveling, num passengers temp would be 9, and so that minus 10 would be -1. Now -1 is not greater or equal to 0, so that means there's no discount that has to be added. That means it's going to ignore these two lines of code because the if statement doesn't match. And of course, we all know that if the if statement doesn't match, then it does not run whatever is within that statement. So within that block. And so instead it comes to else, and then it sets discount flag as false, because there is no discount that has to be added again. Um, so let's say that there were 10 people who are traveling. So num passengers temp would be 10, and so 10 minus 10 is 0, and so greater than or equals to 0 is still fulfilled, and so it does enter this. So that means that for every so the condition was that for every 10 passengers, there's going to be one discount, right? So even if there were 10 passengers traveling, that still gets them one discount. So that's why you have the greater than or equals to, because let's say that there were 10 people, then the number of passengers minus 10 would be 0. And so that still needs to have a discount. And that is why we have the greater than or equals to. So then again, it runs this code. So it says discount is equal to discount plus 1, and then it subtracts 10 from the temp value. And here it becomes clear why we had this temporary variable to begin with, because this variable cannot have the same value forever. This is the one that we loop on. So what it's doing is that every time it adds a discount for every 10th person, is going to subtract 10 from that. So then when we run it again, so when we come at the end of this, so when we say until discount flag equals false or discount is greater than equals to 8, why this exists I will show you in just a second. But essentially when it runs the code again, it when it checks this again, it has been updated. So for example, excuse me. So for example, let's just say that there were 19 people, right? So num passengers temp would initially have 19. So real quick, how many discounts should that get? If there are 19 people and the discount is on every 10th person, how many discounts should be able to to be able to get. Um, nine, not quite nine. If there were 19, sorry, 19. I'll just like speak more clearly. If there were 19, 19, or 19 passengers, so how many discounts should that get? Exactly, it should only get one. Um, right, Salman and Alishba, you both are correct. It should only get one. It should only get one discount. So let's see if that is actually what's happening through the code. So it says num passengers temp minus 10. So initially that is 19 minus 10, which is 9, and that is greater than or equal to 0, obviously. And so it runs this code once, and so it adds one discount, and that is for the 10th person. Now, when it does this, so it subtracts 10 from the value that already existed. So now we have 9. So num passengers temp now has 9, because again, 19 minus 10 is 9. We have accounted for that one person who gets the discount, and now we have to update the num passengers temp. So now this value contains 9. So when it comes back through the loop and tries to run this again, what's going to happen is that num passengers temp now has 9, because that's what has been assigned here. So 9 minus 10 is -1, and so that does not pass through, and so then it exits. So discount has only has the value 1 stored to it, because we initially it was 0, and we ran this code once, and so that gives you 1 discount. And then it sets discount flag equals to false, because this condition was not met. And so once discount flag equals false, that means that there are no more discounts to be added, because if this condition wasn't fulfilled, that means there's not a chance that it ever could be again. So that is the sign for you to leave the loop, because there's no more discount to be calculated. So then the until statement, so the condition for the loop is that until discount flag is false or discount is greater than equal to 8. So I hope this part makes sense. That why is it exiting the loop when discount flag equals false? It's because there is no more discounts to be added. This part, why discount is greater than equals to 8. In fact, I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to try and realize why this exists. So why are we only allowing up to 8 discounts? If a person enters if a person enters, and just by the way, the answer lies here. If the person enters like a group of, let's say, 100, so why aren't we giving them 10 discounts? Just real quick, I'll give you like 30 seconds. The answer lies right here. Just by the way, for all of you watching on YouTube, I am not tuned into the chat there, so I can only see the chat on Zoom. So if you could monitor any responses on YouTube, that would be great. And so, all right, I might as well explain. So here it says that groups of between 10 and 80 passengers inclusive get a free ticket for every 10th passenger. So basically, only between 10 and 80 does this apply. So if you have, for example, 100 passengers that are traveling, only 80 of them will be eligible for this discount pattern. So because it says groups of between 10 and 80. So here, let's say that we entered let's say we entered like, I don't know, 95. So if there were 95 people that were traveling, um, what is what is the purpose of the empty strings? Right. Over YouTube. Right. All right. So what is the purpose of the empty strings? Um, I I'm assuming you mean the empty strings in task 2. Then the purpose of the empty strings is to make this appear more visually appealing when it's actually run. So this isn't something you have to do in your pseudocode. You don't necessarily have to. I mean, it's a bonus point, but you don't have to include this. This is just this part. So you see how there are two empty strings before enter the number of passengers traveling. So there are two empty strings before this that are being output. And so here, if you see enter the number of passengers traveling, there are two blank lines before the last state between the last statement and this one. So there are two blank lines which correspond to the two empty strings. So I hope that cleared her up. Sadia, I hope that cleared up your question. All right, so back to this. Right, so let's say we enter a group of 95 people. So it's going to add discounts for the 10th one, the 20th one, 30th, 40th, 50th. 60th, 70th, and 80th, right? So it's going to have 8 discounts. However, only 8 of these are eligible for the discount claim, right? So there cannot possibly be any more. So that is why we stop at discount is greater than or equals to 8. So if the discount is equals to 8, so initially let's just focus on this part, equals to. If the discount is equals to 8, that means that there have been 80 passengers which are accounted for, and so there's no more iterations that are required because no more people can get the discounts, right? I Yeah, one second. All right, I'll be looking into the Q and A's in just a moment once I'm done with the explanation for this loop. So one second, right here. Right. All right, so that is why we have discount is greater than equals to 8 because that is the condition that is being fulfilled. So once it exits this, once it has accounted for all of these, it then goes into departure flag. And here, one second, departure flag equals to. So this is a flag that it is setting to true, and why it's setting that I will show you in just a second. Um, and now it enters another repeat loop. So just a briefer, we are done with this part, which asks you to calculate the discount. So it says calculate the total price. We'll get to that in a second, but calculate any group discount. So this, it has set up the requirements. This part has set up the requirements for calculating the group discounts. So once it's done with that, like we can actually like apply all of these to the to the total price. So does the same question come in exam? Um, what exactly do we write in paper? We do write all of this. You don't have to write the output strings, the empty strings, because these are just for visual, like for visual effect when we are running this. They will get you extra points, I suppose, like not like extra marking points. I mean, like it will appear a bit more professional, but if you are running short on lines in the exam paper, then by all means just ignore the empty strings. Um, if num passenger temp equals 40, then how much discount? Then that is going to be a discount of 4. And the reason is because if this is 40, then 40 minus 10 is 30, and that's greater than or equals to 0. So that's going to be 1. Then it's going to store 30 again. And so 30 minus 10, 20 again, greater than 0, 10 again, and then 0. So 0 is equal to 0. And so that is also going to satisfy. So this is going to be run 4 times, right? All right. If there's any other questions, please let me know. The last brancher has 2 extra coaches, so that would be 6 times 80. So that yeah. Okay. So that's correct. So it says repeat, and then again it outputs an empty string. And so Sadia, that again it's because you have it's just for the visual effect. So between this and this, there is these empty lines, and so that is because of this. Just give me a second. Okay. Right then. Here it says now what it's doing is that it is taking an input, and this anything that goes with the input. So if you have a string with the input, that is the prompt. And so in fact, if we come back here, it says in the PRM question, it says that every oh, by the way, sir, if you could all the questions that I have answered in the Q&A, if you could dismiss those or like just remove them from the open questions, then that would be great, so I can like monitor which ones are coming in. All right. So it says that your program or programs must include appropriate prompts for the entry of data. So this is what's happening right over here. So whenever there's a string along with input, this means that this is the string that's being displayed to the user at the same time as it's taking the values in. So here it says choose the departure timings, and so this is the input it's taking, and it's storing that value in departure journey. Then it says if departure journey equals 0900. So okay, just before we do that, we are giving them a set of values that they can input, which is 0900, 1100, 13, and 1500. That's because those are the train departure timings that exist. And so these it then so once the person is done inputting them, it compares these values with predefined conditions. So it says that let's say, for example, the user input 0900. So if you say that departure journey equals 0900, then leave tickets one, then it does another check. So here it says, if you go down to task 2, when making a purchase, check that the number of tickets for the required train journeys up and down is available. So that means that if we are purchasing the tickets for departure journey, if the journey chosen was 0900, so 0900 belongs in the very first element of the leave tickets, which we discussed all the way back in task 1. If you need a refresher, here we go, just real quick. We discussed here that leave tickets one is going to be 480, because that is the first, like all of them is going to be 480 except the last one. And leave tickets one, the first index is the first train, so that is the 0900, right? So leave tickets stores the number of tickets still available for that particular train, and so the train at the first index is the 0900. Again, because this is the leave and not the return ones. So if leave tickets one minus num passengers is less than 0, then the output is that there are not enough tickets left on this train. Again, the empty strings are just like decoration, if you might. They're just there to make it visually more appealing. You do not need to write this in the exam. One second. Yeah. All right. If there's any questions, by the way, just let me know in the chat. I will keep up with them. So then it checks that if leave tickets one minus num passengers. So what's happening here is that it is seeing how many, it is getting the value of how many tickets are left for the departure journey of 0900. And so this is the number of tickets left. So initially that's going to be 480, of course. So this would be replaced by 480. 480 minus number of passengers. So let's say that there are, oh, I don't know, 65 passengers traveling. So it's going to check that if the number of tickets left minus the number of people traveling is less than 0, then that means that all the tickets have been sold out, or not all the tickets have been sold out. That means that there are not enough tickets left, right? So if, for example, there are only 32 tickets left and there are 50 people traveling, then that means that 50, then that means like 32 minus 50 is less than 0. So that means that there are not enough tickets left on the train for this particular group to be traveling. So, and that actually fulfills this part, which says that all error messages and other output need to be set out clearly and understandably. We will end it today, or we will, sir, I believe that's a question for you. All right. So, right. So if the condition is not fulfilled, if there are not enough tickets left, then the output is that there are, well, obviously that there are not enough tickets left. So otherwise, so other like the else statement, the fact that we're going into the else statement means that there are enough tickets left, right? So the next thing we do is that we update the information for how many tickets are left. So we say leave tickets one equals leave tickets one minus num passengers. So that means, yes, we'll be finishing it today. All right, so that means that so this is going to update how many people, how many tickets are left. So initially, let's say there are 480, right? And let's say we have a group of 60 students, 60 passengers. So that means that 60, so that means 60 tickets have been bought. And so leave tickets stores the amount of tickets still available. So whatever the amount of tickets are, they have to be reduced by 60 because 60 tickets have been sold out, right? Pretty self-explanatory. So then what we're doing is that we are just updating this into the array. So leave tickets one is the first index of the array, of the leave array. And so that is being updated by subtracting the number of passengers that have just booked the ticket. So whatever that is subtracted from the number of, from the first element of this. And we know that this is not going to be invalid, because the fact that we are doing this in the first place means that this condition was not fulfilled, which means in turn that there are enough tickets left, right? So this will not generate an error, because in order to generate an error, like it just can't, because the fact we're here means that it's okay. Then it says that leave passengers one equals leave passengers one plus num passengers. So what's happening here is that leave passengers contains the total number of passengers that are traveling on that train. So leave passengers one means that it's the first index of the departure train. Leave, so in the arrays, just a quick heads up. In the arrays, leave means departure, and return, return means return. So whenever you see any array which starts with leave, that means that it is one of these four trains. All right, so else leave passengers one equals leave passengers one plus num passengers. So we are adding the number of passengers that just traveled to the chosen train that they're traveling on. And also, again, the fact that we are in any of this means that the array index concern is the first index. Why? Because the condition for us to be in this code is that the train journey chosen was the 0900 train. So this all runs just because they have chosen the 0900 train. And so the 0900 train is the first, is like the data for the 0900 train is at the first element of all of these arrays. So that is why, like all the arrays you see here, they always have the first index because they only need the first index because we are in the conditions for 0900. I hope that makes sense. All right, then we say that the cost equals 25 times the number of passengers minus discount. So there's a bit of arithmetic that's going on here. What this means is that the number of passengers that are traveling. Okay, so let's just ignore this for a second. Right, the part I've highlighted, let's just ignore that. So this leaves us with number of passengers times 25. So that is the base price of how much it's going to cost for the journey. So the number of passengers that are traveling, that is multiplied with the amount for one the cost for one journey, which is $25. So that is the total cost for that journey. However, we are subtracting the discount from that, and as we discussed earlier, the subtraction is going to be the number of discounts applicable times 25, right? So we just arrange that in this form, which is very valid arithmetic, and that's going to be num passengers minus discount times 25. Okay, so after that, we're going to say that after that, we're going to output the total tickets price, and we're going to concatenate that with the string value of cost. So in fact, here you can see why we declared these arrays initially as an integer, because this has to work on them. So you need these arithmetic operations on each of these values, right? So very this like you can't multiply 25 by a string. I mean you can, but the result is a repeated string. It's not the value that we want. It's not going to do mathematics on it. So what we need is that we need these values to be integers. And that's why we declared them as integers, because here they're being added, right? If the arrays were string, this would not be possible. So I hope that clears that up. So what we're doing, however, to output, we need to convert all of it to a string first. So we are outputting the total tickets price plus the string value of the cost. And so that outputs the total ticket price, which here, this part, the total tickets price, this is this part in action. Then we say that that leave total one equals leave total one plus cost, and then we say departure flag equals then we say departure flag equals two. So what we're doing here, leave total one, is that we are adding we are summing the total money taken for that particular train. So here, remember how we had to display the total money taken for each train journey. So that is what's happening here. We are totaling the train journey costs. So for the first one, how many people are traveling, we are adding that to this array, which again, as we discussed way back in task one, this stores the total number of passengers that have traveled on that train. All right, then we set departure flag equals false. This means that we do not need to continue running the code because we have gotten a successful value or an acceptable value for departure. Right. So that ends this if block. Just keep up with me for 1 second. Here there are nested ifs. So nested means that like a nested loop is a loop within a loop. A nested if is an if statement within an if statement. So this is the first if statement. Then um, then this is the end if, right? So so that ends that one. Hold on, 1 second. Right. So this is the first if statement. This is the second if statement. So this is the nested if within this if. That I know that's like a lot of ifs, but this is ended right here. So once we encounter this, all of this code is done and accounted for. This part, this else if corresponds with that's too far up. That else if corresponds with this if. So if this condition isn't met in the first place, then it comes to this else if, which is else if the departure journey equals 1100. Then what it does is that it does basically the exact same thing. However, there's going to be one difference. And like, what do you think the difference is going to be to all of you here? I mean, it's right in front of you, but there's just going to be one difference between all of that, and that is going to be the any guesses? I'll give you like 10 seconds. Please repeat the question. Right. So everything. The question was, Salman, that everything we did up here for the 0900 departure value, like 0900 option, that is going to be repeated exactly the same way for the 1100 option. However, there's just going to be one difference in the code, and like if you could identify what that is. So that was the question. What's the one difference that's going to be there? All right, I'll just say the difference is that the index used for the arrays is going to be different. So initially we were using the first index because that index of the array. So let's take leave ticket. So leave ticket one is the element for the first train, and so that is the 0900 train. However, now that we are on the 1100 train, that is the second one, and that is going to be leave tickets two. One second. Give me a second. Right. So that is going to be the second index. And so all of that what you saw above, like the checking whether the number of tickets is valid, the cost product, the like cost totaling, and then the updating of the total money taken, and the updating of the total passengers, and of course the updating of the number of tickets left. That is exactly the same as we just did. However, the only difference is that this time the updated values are being stored to the second element instead of the first, and everything else remains the same. If you want me to explain what's happening in the code again, then I can do that. But I'm skimming over this part because it is the exact same thing that we just did. However, let me know if you would like me to go through it again. All right. So then if what the user entered was neither 0900 nor 1100, so if it was one of these two, that means that it has still not gone into either this one or one second, or this one, because neither of these conditions, that departure flag equals the given string, neither of those were satisfied, right? So neither was it 1100, neither was it 0900. That means that we are still searching for the correct value that has been entered, right? So then it says else if departure flag equals 1300, and then again we do the exact same stuff that we just did. So all of the totalings, um, all of the updates, and the checks whether the tickets are available, the updating the tickets, updating the total passengers, calculation of the cost, and setting the departure flag equals false. And again, I'll show you why the departure flag even exists, but that will be in just a minute. So all of that is going to be the same again. However, again, the only difference is that we are now interacting with a different element, so a different index of the array, because now we are on the third train for departure, which is the 1300 train. So this is the one that's being used. All right, and then it brings us to the final condition. So if neither the 1100, the 1300, or the 0900 train were chosen, that is way too far up. So if this wasn't done, if this condition wasn't satisfied and this condition wasn't satisfied, that leaves us with one, which is the 1500. So that means that the train that's being chosen is the 1500 train. And so then we're going to do the exact same again, exact same thing again, except we're going to be doing it with the last index, which is the fourth index. Um, we'll be running all of the code again, the totaling, the summations, and everything, except that we will now be interacting with the fourth element of the array. Again, I know I'm skimming over the actual code because, like I said, it was the same. However, if you want me to go through it again, then just let me know and I will do that. Um, 1 second. Yeah, okay. So if you could please monitor the YouTube chat space, because I can't see that. Right. So right, and then that brings us to the end of the actual options that could exist. Then we have an else statement. So again, this else is the super else, and so these else's correspond to all of these super conditions. So if departure flag equals 1300, if departure flag equals like 1500, so this else also corresponds to that. So this means that if neither of those were satisfied, so if it wasn't 0900, if it wasn't 1100, if it wasn't 13, and it wasn't 15, then that means that the arrays that were that means that the values that were entered are not accurate, because none of those actually exist, right? Because we only have these four values for the departure train. So if that happens, then that means that we have to output an error response, which means that it says that invalid response, please choose one of these. So every time that it does that, every time that the user enters a wrong value, this is going to be output. Excuse me. This is going to be output because that was an incorrect value. So the condition, okay, so 1 second, let me show you where this until comes from. This until runs from all the way up here, where we had this repeat. So this repeat is what, oh, actually, 1 second. Yeah, so it runs with that repeat, and the reason it runs with that repeat is because the departure flag basically signifies whether or not a correct value for the departure train has been booked, right? So in the code, it said that the passengers must book their return journey, as in their departure journey and their return journey at the same time, right? So they have to choose one of each. So we have to make sure that they are not moving on without having chosen a correct value. So the departure flag actually monitors that, in that until the departure flag is false, it will keep running this. It will keep running all of this. So it's going to keep asking the user to input their value until a correct value is entered. So, and we know that the correct value is one of these four, right? So one of this. So if it's 1500, then it's going to enter this code. If it's 1300, and so on and so forth. So we know that those are the correct values, and if you can see, then the last thing we're doing in all of those blocks of code, the last thing we're doing is that we are setting the departure flag to false. So that means that after we are done inputting a correct value, we are turning this to false, and then we may exit the loop. So how the repeat loop works is that it runs whatever is running until this condition is fulfilled, and so this condition is going to be fulfilled when when a correct value is entered and the departure flag is turned false. And we know that all the way up here, if you go all the way up here, the departure flag was initially set to true. So this will run until it's turned to false, and it's going to be turned to false within one of the blocks of code. So I hope that makes sense. And so that covers the booking of the the booking of the departure journey, right? So now essentially what we have to do is that we have to repeat the exact same process. However, we are going to do that with the return flag, with the return journeys. Pardon me. So essentially the exact same thing we did. However, the arrays are going to be these ones. This is class one. So this array that we declared here, return tickets, this is going to be the ones that are used. So return passengers, return tickets, and return total. These are the arrays that are going to be in use, because again we are dealing with the return journeys. So here it has a new flag, which is return flag, which is doing the exact same thing that the departure flag did. Just we're using it for the return journey, so we have to specify that it is the return journey, because like we said here, that all variables constitute the return journey. So constants and identifiers must have meaningful names. So this would not be very meaningful if I said that if I reuse departure flag, because we are no longer dealing with the departure values, and so this has to be the return flag. So after that, we say that, so now it's doing the exact same thing again. So it's taking the input values, it is checking them against the valid values. However, this time there's only a couple of valid values. There are, as in like there are different values that are allowed. There's the 1000, there's a 1200, there's a 1400, and there is the 1600. So these are the only values that we are allowed to have, because they're the only ones that exist within the return journeys. So once we come with that, it's going to do the exact same thing. It's going to check whether those values are correct, um, whether they exist in the system, and if they do, it's going to calculate the cost. It's going to like calculate the discount, and it's going to update all the respective the data structures. So it's going to do that for the 1000. If it can't do that for the 1000, that means that the 1000 wasn't chosen. And so it has to be the 1200 that's chosen. And then again, it's going to repeat all of that. If that isn't satisfied, it's going to repeat that for the 1400. If that isn't satisfied, it's going to repeat that for the last one, which is 1600. However, if that isn't satisfied, that means that the user entered a wrong value, because neither of the only four correct options were chosen. So that means that the option was wrong. And again, we're using the condition that until return flag equals false, we will not exit the loop. So until the user, essentially what that means is until the user enters a correct value, we will keep going with that. Right, and so this is where this part comes in. So if the tickets are available, so update the screen display and the data for the totals. That is what we're doing here. So we have been updating the data along the way. So during all of this code, the data is being updated. This is an update of data. This is an update of data. All of this, these are data updates. So and then we have to display them. So update the screen display and the total and the data for the total. So update the data we've done. Update the screen display we are about to do right now, which means that again the screen is only showing the timings and the tickets left. It's not showing like the money or like the total passengers or anything. The screen displays the timings and the tickets available for those timings. So it says that output the departure train, like so departure train 0900, and then the amount of money, the amount of tickets left for that train. So it's doing essentially what we did right here in task one. However, it's doing that again because these values are now updated. So the values stored within the arrays, they are now updated, and they have to be redisplayed. And again, for any of you wondering, the empty strings are just to make things visually more appealing. So this is all courtesy due to the empty strings. Right. This is the part where the very first flag that we declared, all the way up here. So that's long. So continue flag. Continue flag is now that is where it's being used. So continue flag, like we said, um, that signifies whether or not the loop is going to run in the first place. So whether or not we have chosen we have ended the day or whether there's another ticket to choose. So if we come all the way down here, the final until statement is here. So it says that now it takes an input of the continue flag string. So it asks the user, are there more tickets to buy? Yes or no. So like what we did here. Are there more tickets to buy? Yes or no. And if you enter yes, so then that value is stored in continue flag. And so if the answer is yes, then that means that the continue flag equals true, because we're going to keep running the loop until they want to, which is going to be if the continue flag equals true. So if the answer is y, in other words, if the answer is yes, then it's going to set continue flag to true. Otherwise, if it's not, if the answer is no, then it's going to set it to false. So if it doesn't work, so if the user does not wish to buy more tickets, then the input is going to be false, and it's going to set continue flag to false. If the input is going to be no, and it's going to set continue flag to false. So otherwise, if none of these two conditions are fulfilled, that means that the values that were entered were not correct, right? So it was neither yes nor no, and obviously that can't exist. So we say that enter a correct value, because that is the error message that we give. All right, so that is it for task 2. This is where task 3 begins, and we have a separate file for that. So that is it for task 2. That is where we end with task 2, because everything that has to be done here has been achieved. Let me just zoom into this. So this is where we begin task 3. Real quick, are there any questions for task 2? Um, Over on YouTube, sir, if you could please tell me if there's any questions from YouTube. I am monitoring the chat here. So we are going to go ahead and start with the third task. um, Sir, there is a request from Zohaib. Okay. Let's just wind up with task 3. It's short and sweet. It'll just take a couple of minutes. Um, so here, so task 3 says that a task it says that this is the task being displayed at the end of the day. So what we have to do is display the number of passengers that traveled on each train journey and the total money taken for each train journey. And then we have to calculate and display the total passengers and the total amount of money. And then we have to find and display the train journey with the most passengers that day. So let me just zoom into this here. So for for this task, we have declared a couple of extra variables. So we say that total passengers is an integer, total money is an integer, most passengers is an integer, and why this is necessary, I will show you in a minute. Then we have leave most and return most as booleans, and then we have index as an integer. Right. So right off the bat, we are displaying the number of passengers that travel. So this part, display the number of passengers that travel on each train journey. So that is this part. Excuse me. That is this part. The number of passengers on the 0900 departure train. That is concatenated with the value for leave passengers one. So leave passengers one means that the number of passengers on um, the number of passengers on the departure train that is being concatenated with and the 900 departure train 900 that is being concatenated with that particular string. Just a second. Sukun over YT. Why users are prompted to input data? Will it not be appropriate to write print instead of output? Print is used in it's not a keyword in pseudocode. So this code is pseudocode. Sukun, I apologize in advance if I pronounce your name wrong. But Sukun, your question. This is the answer to your question. We are not using print because print is not it's not a function that exists within pseudocode. That's a function that exists in Python. So in pseudocode we say output, and in Python we say print. It's doing the exact same thing, but since this code is written in print, in pseudocode we can't say print. Hope that answers your question. Right. So the first part was to display the number of passengers on each train journey. We have done that. So we are doing that for each journey. And along with that, we are also displaying the total money taken for each train. So in fact, let me show you here. Um, let's just go with that. No. So here is me saying no, so it's going to exit. So this is task 3. So here it says that the total number of passengers on the 1200 return train is this, and the total money for the 1200 return train is this. So I've grouped. So what's happening in the code is that the train timings or the train like the train options are grouped together. So the money and the passengers are grouped together. So the 0900 train, the data for the 0900, so that means the number of passengers and the total money, that is grouped into one block. So it is being displayed together. So that is then repeated for the 1100 departure train. And again, the 1100 departure means that we are accessing the leave arrays. And the fact that it's 1100 means it's the second one, so it goes into two. And then again, that is repeated for all of the other ones. So the number of passengers on the 1000 return train, we are now entering the return journeys. So the total number of passengers of that is concatenated with the return passengers on, or with like the value at the first index of return passengers. And again, that's going to be an integer, so we have to first convert that into a string. All right. So, and then that is repeated for all of the other ones. So that's repeated for the 1200 train, for the 1400 and the 1600. And again, the indexes are incremented each time because we are making sure, because like that is the index at which the data is stored for that particular train. Right. So once that is done, that comes to the end of this part of task 3. So display the number of passengers and total money. That's done. So next, what we have to do is we have to calculate and display the total number of passengers, like as in like the total number of passengers throughout all of the trains, and the total amount of money taken for the day. So for the day means that this is all 8 journeys. So all 4 of the return journeys and all 4 of the departure journeys. We are considering all of them. So then we have to calculate and display that. So basically, what that means is that for all 4 values, for all 4 indexes or elements of both arrays, we are just summing all of the data values. So, for example, leave passengers is going to contain the values for the amount of passengers traveling in the departure trains for 0900 at index 1, for 1100 at index 2, for 1300 index 3, and 1500 index 4, right? So what we basically have to do is that the total number of passengers, we just have to sum them. So we have to sum the first with the second, second with the third, third with the fourth, and so on. Um, so that is being done in a for to next loop. So we say that for I is just a counter variable. So for I equals 1 to 4, we are taking total passengers, which is the variable that we are storing this value in, and we are adding to that the leave passenger count for that particular iteration. So I is going to change with every iteration. At the first time we run the code, I is going to be 1, and so leave passengers 1 is added to total passengers, and then return passenger 1 is added to total passengers as well. And the reason is that we want to sum the values from both of the arrays, right? So we want to take the value of the first index of the leave array and the value of the first index of the return array, and then that is the sum. So that is done for total passengers, and then total money is going to be the same, except that the array is different. So leave total and return total, that is stored. Those values are added to total money. So for I equals 1 to 4, it's going to do that for total passengers, and it's going to do that for total money. So that is at the first iteration, the I value will be 1. Once we are done with that, that means that we now need to move on to the second values for all 4 of these arrays. And so I is going to be equal to 2, and then it's going to sum them again. The same is going to happen for 3 and 4, and then at the end of that, we have all 4 of the arrays, of all 4 of the arrays and all 4 indexes of the arrays accounted for. So now we have, so now in total money and total passengers, that contains what we need here. So we need the total number of passengers that is stored in total passengers, and we need the total amount of money that is stored in total money. And so next we have to calculate and display. So we'll do that in just a second. But what we need to do is find and display the train journey with the most passengers. This is where this part comes in. And okay, so here what we're doing is a couple of things. We have said that we have declared and initialized a variable called most passengers. So the declaration once again is up here, is an integer. We have declared that, and we have set that to negative 1,000. The reason for this value is that basically what we want to do is that we want to take every single value that is stored within the arrays, and we want to see which of those are greater than the last highest, right? So the first value is going to be like the lowest of them all as of right now. I hope that makes sense. So like, because we haven't considered any of them, right? So the first value by default is going to be the lowest. So we set most passengers to a very, very low number, so that whatever the first value is, that is by default going to be greater than that, because there can't be negative passengers traveling, right? So anything that you enter, any positive number is going to be greater than negative 1,000, because by default, right? So so that's why we set the most passengers to negative 1,000. Then we have a flag called leave most, and then we have a flag called return most. So this basically shows whether or not we have found the index, or like the train where the the train at which the most amount of passengers were traveling for both departure and return. So that will become a bit more clear once we go through the code. I just like this was just a brief overview. And then we set index equals 0. Index basically shows the index at which we are looking at the like which index of the train are we looking at, which index of the area we are looking at. And again, that will become clear in just a moment. So here, what we do is that we run all of this within a for loop. So all of this is being done within a for loop. And so this is for I equals 1 to 4. Again, we choose 1 to 4 because there are only four values within the array. So there's four indexes. There's the first element, the second element, third, and fourth. And so each of those are I of 1, 2, 3, and 4. So then we say that if leave passengers I is greater than most passengers, so if the amount of passengers that have traveled on that particular train, so for the first time we run through the code, we are considering I equals 1, right? So that is the first leave train, which is the 0900 departure train. So if we say that leave passengers 1 is because I currently is equals to 1. So if leave passengers 1 is greater than most passengers, then that means that currently leave passengers 1 contains the highest amount of passengers that have traveled. Um, all right, so can you have another question? It should be choose your returning time. Um, Choose your returning time. I do not quite get that. Are you talking about task 1 or task 2? Just let me know which task are you talking about. All right. So here what it's doing is that this means this condition means that it has that whatever the number of passengers are that have traveled on the 0900 train, because I equals 1, um, that if that is greater than the most passengers, that means that it is currently the highest amount of passengers that have traveled. So if that's true, what it's going to do is that it's going to take whatever the number of passengers were, is going to set that to most passengers. So now most passengers is contains the value that is the current highest. And if this condition was fulfilled, that means that this is the current highest, right? So it's going to take this and it's going to set that to most passengers. And then again, what it does is that it sets the index to whatever the I value is. So this index signifies what element, what index of the array contained the current highest. And so if whatever the I value is right now, if this is fulfilled, then that means that this index contains the highest amount. And so we're going to use this variable when we come back to display. And then it says that leave most equals true and return most equals false. So basically what this means is that we have found so leave most equals true means that we have found the maximum value for the leave passengers, right? So it does that again for the return passengers. So here we saw that we have to find and display the train journey with the most passengers that day. So it's going to do that for both arrays. It's going to do that for the leave journey and for the return journey. So it's going to say that if return passengers I is greater than most passengers, again, it's going to run all of that. And then here. So at the end of all of this, so within all of this for to next statement, within this, after it is done iterating through all four values, so for I equals 1, for I equals 1, for I equals 2, for I equals 3, and I equals 4, that means that now all of the arrays have been accounted for. All of the indexes have been accounted for. So now it contains sorry. So now most passengers contains the value of the highest amount of passengers that have currently traveled. So now what it does is that it looks at which index contains that value and what that value actually is. So if it says that index equals 1 and leave most, so this means that if leave most equals true and index equals 1, then that means that the 0900 departure train had the most passengers and the value is the most passenger value. So so if index equals 1, then the first index is the 0900 departure train, and we know it's a departure train because we have leave most. So it's going to take that, and so it's going to say else, and then it's going to take the index, and it's going to output that. So then we say that else if the index equals 1 and return most equals true, then that means that the first, so index 1 means like the first of them, right? So if index equals 1 and leave most, then that means that the first departure train had the most passengers, which was the 0900. Otherwise, if then we say else if index equals 1 and return most, that means that we are still considering the first element, but we are now considering the first element of the return train. And so that means that that's going to be the 1000 return train, because return most was equals to true. So so once that is fulfilled, we come to else if, and now we are considering the second index, and that means that if the second index equals 2 and leave most equals 2, then that means that the 1100 departure train had the most passengers, because if you see up here, um, there were four values for departure, and there were the 0900, there were the 1100, there were the 1300, and there were the 1500. So if the second index, if the most value is at the second index, that means that that was the 1100 departure train. And so again, we repeat all of that process for the second one. And if leave most equals true, then that means that the 1100 departure train had the most. And if return most equals true, then that means that the second return train, which was the 1200 return train, then that had the most passengers. So it does these checks for all four indexes. It does them for index one, for index two, index three, and index four, and then it outputs the appropriate response. And so that is what's happening here. So this entire if block is just one gigantic check on which of these values, which of these arrays had the highest value, right? So then we say, and again, just a quick recap, index was being stored here. So every time the highest value was identified, the index was updated. Then the last thing we have to output is the find and display the train journey with the most passengers for that day. So then we say that the total money, which was to be updated here, display the total money taken for each train journey, and so that is being displayed here. So it says output the total money taken for the day. It's going to concatenate that with the string value for total money. Um, all right, sure. All right. So it's gonna display the total amount of money that has been spent over like all of the passengers. So that's gonna be string total money, and then it's gonna concatenate that value with this prop, right? Then we have output the total passengers traveling for the day, and then it's gonna concatenate that with total passengers. And again, these both are not arrays. They're not elements of an array. They are the index. They are the variables that we have stored the values to. So up here, all we were doing is that we were storing most passengers and the total money. So these are variables that contain these values. The total passengers traveling for that day is going to have a string of total passengers, concatenating to that. So here, that is these two parts. So total money taken for the day and total passengers traveling for the day. This is what has been output. So that brings us to the end of all three tasks, and that is the pseudocode. There are one last thing before we wrap up. This is Sir ZAK's GitHub account, and this is where you will find all of the data for everything I just showed. Everything, including the simulator, the pseudocode for it, and in fact the Python code and the Visual Basic code, which are two programming languages. Those are all available on this. So the address, in fact, let me show you how to get to it. So if you want to get to this folder, so what you have to do is you have to type this. So you have to type github.com/ZAK on web, just in this way, and that brings you to this page, right? What we need to go to is pre-release materials. So you go here, and we are currently on June 2021. So we enter here. We are in O levels, and the variant is 2.2. This might be updated by the time, like if you view this back in 2 or 3 days, this will contain other variants as well. So all you need to worry about is the O level variant 2.2. So go into O levels, go into variant 2.2, and this is all the data that you have. Um, oh, I have just gone to know that Sir has WhatsApp you. Okay, so just for those who are not on the group, this is where you will find all of it. So this contains the question, which is this folder, which is this file, and so this contains that, and this is the pseudocode that we were just talking about. This is the Python version of it. This is the Visual Basic version, and this is the simulator that's right here. Right. So that I believe brings us to the end of the PRM for variant 2.2. If there's any questions, I will take them now for about, let's say, well, I mean, however long is necessary. So if you have any questions, please let me know. And that is about it. So yeah, oh yeah. Just by the way, the one important point is that the exam, as in the code that you guys will have to write in the paper, that is only going to be pseudocode. So the only thing you need to learn, the only sort of, I mean, I would never recommend that you memorize any code, but if you like want to look at the stuff you have to write, this is the folder you will have to go to. So task 1, 2, and 3. This the pseudocode folder is what you are concerned with. The Python and the Visual Basic are just for comparison, just for like reference. If either of you, if anyone like knows either of these languages, it might be like fun to sort of compare them. So that is the only reason these two folders exist. You do not need to write these in the actual exam. Right. So that brings us to the end of the PRM. If there's any questions, I will take them now. How is the PRM access in the exam? Do we have to write the whole pseudocode? Okay, so yeah, good question actually. So what happens in the exam is that you will be asked to write the code for task 1, or you might be asked to write the code for task 2. Or another thing that occurs is one of the questions is going to be a little bit of a modification on the question that already was here, right? So this is the PRM question that exists for you guys as of right now. But however, this can change, as in like this won't change. But the question can say, oh, additionally to that, like you have to like your program must do this. So like extend task 2 as task 3. So basically, what you need to do is learn these 3 tasks, like and not just memorize them, but like try and understand like what's happening in them, and then according to those, you will have to like answer questions. So you might be asked to write the code for task 2. Excuse me, you might be asked to write the code for task 3, or you might be asked to write the code for task 4. And oh yeah, we will also be releasing the expected questions in a couple of days. So like all of you should like just keep checking back to this folder, because everything that we have will be updated here. So there's going to be another folder in here of the expected questions, which you guys can then practice with for this PRM. So yeah, that I hope that answers that. Do we have to write the whole pseudocode? Again, that depends on like what the question asks of you. It might just ask you for task 1, might just ask you for task 2. All right, so I believe that's about it. So is there anything from over on YouTube? I guess not. So yeah, that wraps up
I think
today's.
it was quite helpful. This was quite comprehensive, and you did a great job.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Hamza, for your great help. I hope
Anytime.
that it will help our students. And I think that's it. We will get back for other variants soon and for A levels as well. Thank you very much, Hamza. Take care.
Always a pleasure. Allah Hafiz. All right. So that brings us to the end of task 1 of the PRM for variant 2.2. I hope it makes sense. Like if there's any questions for those over at YouTube, you can always like leave them in the comments, and I'll keep checking back, and we will get back to you. Me and Sir will be active on those, and yeah, we will be coming back with variants 2.1 and 2.3 pretty soon, and like I said, and A levels as well. So I hope this was satisfactory. I hope this made sense, and I believe that's about it. So have a great evening.